Hello, class year professor Frank Henry Law, and this is a continuation of the neighborhood and built environment. So, how does mercury impact health? So, mercury is known to cause it's a neurotoxin and causes neurological damage. So, what does that mean? So, brain functioning, right? Neurology is like your brain and so forth. So think of it as your ability to think, to learn, to pay attention. Mercury affects those things. And then mercury is really big, or really concentrated or found in fish and shellfish. That's why times you hear that pregnant women should not eat fish and shellfish because why that passed on to the fetus and it causes, it messes with their development of their neurons and things of that for their brain functioning. Almost all people have at least some small amounts of what was called methyl mercury in their body. Possible symptoms of methyl mercury poisoning may include loss of peripheral vision, so unable to see out the sides of your out the sides of your vision, pins and needles in your fingers, so it kind of feels tingly or something along those lines, impaired speech, walking, muscle weakness. Infants in the womb can be exposed to methyl mercury when their mothers eat fish and shellfish. So it affects growing brains and nervous systems. It impacts their cognitive thinking, memory, attention, language, and so forth. So pregnant women and nursing women should not eat fish. So a lot of times mercury is spilled from products and contaminates water and so forth. It can be inhaled and affect the lungs. Um, and some of the symptoms is tremors, emotional changes, insomnia, and so forth. Higher exposure affects the kidney, respiratory failure, and death. What you'll notice a common theme of a lot of these different element exposures like minerals and things like that, which you'll notice that affects the kidney because that's what cleans out our system is our kidney. So it begins to damage or overflows the system. There is inorganic mercury, which this is known to damage the GI tract, so your gastrointestinal tract, so like your stomach. And then high exposure, you'll see like issues with the skin and so forth. Once again, you'll see the kidney damage as well. A lot of times it's contaminated in our drinking waters. So, it's natural in our environment. So a lot of times when areas that has trace of mercury gets eroded or gets ruined or whatever it may be, it begins to seep into the water system. And also factories too, refineries often releases into the water system as well. There's a case in Manamata, Japan, and what ended up happening was a plastic factory released mercury into the water system, and what happened, the fish began to eat it and so forth, and fish is a staple of this community's diet, and so they began to experience these interesting symptoms, and no one knew what was happening, and it was coined the Minamata disease because you know 1,500 people died. A lot of children were born with like birth defects and so forth. There's a video that I posted and talks about how um the cats were going around in circles around themselves and so forth because of this. So it was a really big issue. Contaminated crops. So in 1971, due to like a mislabeling, Iraq was getting some grain from Mexico, and the grain was never expected to be fed to humans, but it was fed to them. And the people ended up eating it and became disastrous. You also have cases where coal burning also leads to exposure. You got to remember because what goes up must come down. So what's floating in the air also can go into our water, contaminate our fish. So we do have common areas of, or common things even today that has mercury, like antiques could have it, appliances could have it, automotive parts can have it, light bulbs could have it. A lot of times you'll be in like chemistry or in a lab or something along those lines. They say don't drop the thermostat because a lot of these thermostats were made with mercury. So the breaking of the thermostat could lead to exposure of mercury. Mercury export was banned in 2008. So mercury is not allowed to be exported from the US. Mercury containing rechargeable batteries was stopped in 1996. And then according to the Clean Air Act, all the different, it was one of the things in the Clean Air Act was being regulated. And the same thing with the Clean Water Act. Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act requires that industries and federal facilities report emissions of chemicals. So if there was a spill or if it's being released on the air, they have to inform, they have to disclose that. Also, Safe Drinking Water Act, EPA set standards for drinking water that applies to public water systems. And that is it for mercury.